Hello and welcome to this online asynchronous lecture on how to visualize data and how to understand data. My name is Martin Hillenbrand and I'm one of the PhD students of the Chair of Ecological Resource Technology of Professor Helbig, and I will do this asynchronous lecture with you today. So let's get started. At first, we will start with a small introduction on how to work with data, how to visualize this data. After that, we will look at different types of analysis and how to visualize them. We will follow up with different types of graphs and plots and how to use them and when maybe not to use them. Followed up by using AI to facilitate your life when doing data visualization. And we will finish with misleading graphs and an overview of good and bad graphs as examples. Let's get started with the introduction with a small question or multiple questions. So stop this video and write down your answer for yourself. So first question would be, when was the last time you saw a plot, a graph or a data visualization, and what was the first thing you focused on when you were trying to understand that graph? Second question would be, what was the hardest part to understand when you tried to understand the graphic? And the last question would be, what would you change when you design a graph in the future? So please stop the video now, think about the three questions, and we will see each other on the next slide. So you have your answers on those questions, and I'm going to present to you my answers that I found for the question. So with the first questions, when I'm looking at a graph or a visualization, and this is true for a lot of people, then they will focus on the largest color part in the graphic. So what do I mean with the largest color graph or largest color part? So if you look at this slide here right now, you will notice the big green colorful area with the speaker's desk and the speaker, and you will notice the introduction, so to say, button. And those are the two things, the two main things that often people focus on when they see this slide for the first time. And also, if I would have now something red on another signal color, in this slide here, people will focus on those signal colors. So what's the hardest part to understand when trying to understand graphics? So often it's, okay, what's the main message? Often data visualizations are quite crowded, and so you have to figure out, okay, what is the author trying to show me? And also, what are the limitations of this figure and of this representation of data? Because often those limitations are not clearly visible in data visualization, but they should be. So then what would you change when you design a graph in the future? So I hope that you have written down some parts that you might change in the future, but I'm sure after this e-learning course here, you will have some points you will improve in the future, hopefully. So again, if we are talking about focus and about what you focus on when reading a slide, when reading a data visualization, or when looking at any kind of information, there is a certain line that most people from the audience will follow. So you will read this first, so maybe the white one in the middle, and after that you will read the one in the black frame and follow through the different levels of what you look at with an information representation. And often the smaller it gets, the later you will read it, and the more outside of the center of focus it is, the later you will read it. Think about this also when you are doing data visualization, so the main information might be in the middle, and if you have an information which is like very small and very hidden, then people will not focus on that, at least not in the beginning when they try to understand what you want to visualize with your data visualization. So some general information and tips when presenting are those 8 points here. And I know this is a slide with a lot of text, so you can also take this as a read slide for the future when you're trying to do data visualization or you present or you prepare your presentation of research data. So try to focus on your target group. Yeah, clarify expectations. Also ensure what's the knowledge of the target group, and also try to find out, okay, what they know, what they don't know, and how you can approach them. Plan your content carefully and structured. So try having a red thread, a storyline, and use examples and exercises to illustrate the content. Presentation style. You should use a clear and clean language, and also pay attention to your body language and how you show the audience what to focus on. Yeah? Those visuals are aids to support your message, but the message comes from yourself. So those slides that I'm using right now, they are aiding my teaching, but the teaching happens with what I'm telling you. Interaction. So too much interaction in research presentation might also not be good, but often it's very nice to break up this front to audience talks and presentations and try to be a little bit interactive. Maybe have a question, maybe ask your participants for feedback, and yeah, try to encourage this interaction, because this also ensures that your audience is awake and concentrated and focused on what you say. Also, concentrate on time management. If you have a time limitation, you should stick to that time limitation and use the time you have, but also not take more time than you have, and because that might also lead to you hurrying up in the end with your results, for example, and that would be sad, because I'm expecting you to having results that you want to present. So plan your time and also stick to the timeline. And preparation. So preparation is key. You can test your presentation before you have the presentation slot, and you can prepare, for example, a PowerPoint presentation. Also prepare all the material you need. Yeah, have a presenter, for example, have your HDMI cable, whatever you need for your presentation to be successful. Ensure that you have it before the presentation, so you are not getting stressed when it's time for your presentation then. Yeah? So what you can prepare before will help you with your presentation to not freak out, to not get stressed. Authenticity is also very important. So you are who you are, and everyone has a different style of presentation. So use this. Yeah? If you're a little bit more shy, it's fine. It's totally okay. If you're super outgoing, also nice. Yeah? But try to leverage what you have and be yourself, and don't try to be someone else. And so it's totally fine to be a little bit shy or to be a little bit nervous. You can always say that also. Hey, I'm a little bit nervous, so please questions in the end or something like that. Yeah, it's always also okay to say, hey, I lost the red thread. Please give me some seconds to refocus to get into the presentation again. Totally fine. Everyone will understand it, especially if you're a little bit younger and don't have too much experience with presentations. And the last point is continuity. Yeah, try using a color scheme, a theme that you have, which you have during your full presentation, so you're not changing over colors. And also within your slides, try having some things which are repeating, so that makes it easier for your audience to focus on your content, not get distracted because something is changing. For example, if you have your slide number in the bottom right, don't change it to the bottom left, keep it in the bottom right. If you have a title, don't change the title all the time, don't change the color scheme all the time, because this will lead away the attention of your audience from what you want to show them. Yeah? So when you use color changes, when you use different fonts, when you use, for example, also bold fonts, do that only if you want to show something special, so that the focus of your audience is on what you want to show them. And as we are talking about data, we have to also talk about bias and sampling. So confirmation bias might be one of the biases you already know. The tendency to seek information that support our views, it's what we call confirmation bias. And this happens very fast, because when we are searching, for example, literature, we are often searching literature that is in line with what we are expecting, yeah, because we're searching for it. So obviously we search for the things that maybe confirm our own point of view. Keep that in mind when you're working also with data. When you interpret data, often you have to ensure that what you think is right is really right and is in the data, and not just look at the data and say, okay, it's this or that, just because it fits with your worldview. And overgeneralization bias is also something that happens very fast when we work with data. If you're looking at the data set of a population, for example, think about it. Is this a representative data set? Yeah? Can we really draw out general answers from this data set and from the results we produce? So for example, if you look at vehicles in the world and you want to understand the vehicle markets, if you have a data set for Germany, you cannot leverage that to the full world, because the data set for Germany will be very different from the data set on vehicles in China or the US, because they drive different cars. And so, yeah, don't do inappropriate extending of observations. So don't overgeneralize your findings, and try to be really precise with what results you can work out of your presentation, out of your data visualization, and when interpreting your data. And then reporting publication bias is the last bias I want to highlight here now today. So within research and science especially, we often only report significant values, we only report positive values. So if you have data and information of an experiment from scientific literature, often it's only the cases that get published which are positive results. So you did an experiment and it was a positive result in that experiment, then it's getting published. If the result was negative or the experiment failed, often that's not getting reported. And that way we have a problem, because we only see in the data often. Today we are often aware of this publication and reporting bias, but within data and within information that get published, often we have only in reporting that is affirming our beliefs and hypotheses, and we don't have negative results which are like, which would criticize our beliefs and hypotheses. So keep that in mind when you use also data sets which were published, and keep that in mind with working with data and with working with data of other people especially.
In data science and research, we always will encounter data sets with missing data points. There are different reasons data is missing, and distinguishing among them is important to avoid bias. Deciding how to handle missing data and being transparent about where we manipulated the original data set or the decisions we are taking are part of working scientifically. Other researchers should always be able to replicate what we were doing and get the same results. So understanding the reason why data is missing and how this data is missing is the first step. So understanding, is it structurally missing data? So is there a systemic cause for it, which is quite often the case in criticality assessment or industrial ecology? Or is the data missing completely at random, or missing only at random, or missing not at random? And when having that information, then we can decide on how to proceed from there and how to close those data gaps. So for example, when calculating the Heffendel-Hirschman index on country concentration, we know that often data for the US is withheld. So we don't have missing at random or completely randomness. We know there is a systemic cause for this data missing in the data set that we have to fix in another way, and not by approaches that are only working for MAR or MCAR. Single imputations are a process for estimating one or a single missing value to close the data gaps. Different strategies exist, and deciding which strategy to take is highly depending on the underlying dataset. Some of the strategies that were proposed or used before, like the LOCF or the BOCF, are no longer recommended and should be avoided. Also, deciding on which strategy to take is depending on the underlying data set. So there is no one solution fits it all, although often mean or median imputation are used. Sometimes that makes sense, sometimes another approach might make more sense, like the hot deck imputation, which sometimes is used when working with countries. So you're assuming, okay, I don't have data point for the country A, but I have it for country B, and country B is comparable to country A. So I'm closing my data gap for country A by using the data for country B, which is reasonable, but always make transparent when you're doing that, and always think of, okay, is country A and B, can I really do this? Are they comparable? And this is depending on what what data set you are looking at, what data you are looking at. So there is also, as I said before, no golden solution which fits it all. Sometimes we have solutions like multiple or regression imputations. So multiple imputations generate multiple plausible imputed data sets. So this is basically like changing the way of closing the data gaps with changing values, and then in the end looking into different scenarios. So you're taking 10 different approaches to close it, and then in the end you look into, okay, how large is the deviation between the results? And that way you can calculate statistical interference, and you get a good understanding of the uncertainty in your dataset, which is introduced just because of your closing algorithm. A comparable approach is the regression imputation. So you are predicting missing values using a regression model based on the other variables in your dataset. So this method can be used, and it utilizes the relationship between the variables, but it assumes linearity and can be sensitive to outliers. So keep that in mind, that you have to check for linearity before using the regression imputation. The all of those imputation strategies are best for MAR data. So you have a missingness at random. You cannot use it if this is not the case, because then you would, as before, introduce biases. So this is an example here for closing data gaps on the left side. With a regression-based model, it's using the iterative imputer from the sklearn Python library. So you can use it, and you see that the closure of the data gaps is way better than using just average values. So you can do the calculation also by hand and look into, okay, what values would you have chosen. By using here multiple or regression imputation, the advantage is that the connection and the relationship between X, Y, and Z is taken into account, which often is the case. So if you have data points that have no connection between X, Y, and Z, then there is no value in using this approach. But if you have that relationship, you have to account for that. So as highlighted before, always indicate when you close a data gap based on assumptions. Introduce, for example, an indicator or flagging in the dataset. So use methods that are best practice for the use case that you are working with. And if you are unsure, try to gain more domain knowledge about the datasets also, but also about what is best practice in that research field, and or get judgment by expert on how to proceed and handle missing data. Often just asking someone who is working with the datasets that you started working with is a good idea, because they know about the problems in the dataset.